Is your test tomorrow or within just a week? And are you too nervous about your performance? Are you nervous as to whether you underperform or whether you can perform well during the test or not? Well, this video is for you. That's because in this video, I'm going to give some of the practical tips on how to overcome the exam nerves. Whether you're going to do an IELTS test, TOEFL, or PT academic, or Duolingo test, or any test, this video is going to be useful. So don't skip this video. Watch it till the end. And I hope at the end you'll be able to overcome your exam nerves. So let's get started without any further ado. Well, as a test taker, it's not unusual to be constantly on edge. You feel nervous, which is a positive sign because if you are nervous about your test, it shows that you are serious about your goal. Relaxation, if you're too relaxed and if you're not nervous at all about your test, this is a sign that you are not serious about your goal, about your test. So feeling nervous is a positive sign to some extent. So the first piece of advice I'd like to give you is to familiarize yourself with the format of the test. Think about what components your test consists of and what tasks each of those components comprises. Think about what each task requires you to do, what is expected out of you, what is expected from you in each of the tasks, in each component of the test. As such, you should put some time and effort to practicing those task questions. And as for the question types, as for the study materials, I recommend study only those materials that reflect the real test. As for the IELTS test, I always recommend that my students practice questions from the ones published by Cambridge University Press, because Cambridge University Press designs questions for the IELTS test. So make sure you choose the right test materials, practice materials that reflect the real exam questions. So think about what time best suits you while preparing. Some students prefer to study in the morning because morning time suits them the best, while others are night owls and they prefer to study in loneliness during the night. So decide which time best suits you and give 100% to your preparation. That way you are already on the way to feeling confident about the test. One surest way to boost your confidence is to prepare for the test and give 100% to it in advance. And that leads to another piece of advice, which is during the test day or the night before the test day, make sure you get plenty of sleep. And what I usually recommend that my students do is just before they go to bed, they study the materials. They have a cursory glance over what materials that they practice. And as for the IELTS test, I usually recommend that students copy those sample answers from task 1 and task 2 from the writing test, because the more they copy the model answers, or the answers prepared by the IELTS experts and the examiners, the better understanding they have and the more confident they feel. And during the test day, don't overact. Some students are too nervous and during their nervousness, they skip the meal and they overact and they are hungry, and as a result, during the test hours, they can't perform well because a hungry stomach can't perform well. So make sure you are well fed and don't overact, act normal. And the next thing is get to the test center on time. Don't arrive at the test center too early and don't arrive at the test center too late, because if you get to the test center too early, chances are that you have to hang around for ages and your mind may be overflooded with negative emotions about the test. As for the form of transport that you should use to get to the test center, if the test center is far and if you have to use transport, some forms of transport, I recommend that you use public transport rather than private transport, because if you use private transport, chances are that there is an increased risk of accidents, or what if your vehicles break down in the middle of the way, you may get late for the test. So I recommend you use public transport. That's because if you use public transport, you minimize the risk. And the next thing is, as you're on the way to the test center, you can also make the best use of the practice materials, whether it be on your cell phone, or the practice materials on paper that you've made notes of. And the next thing is, if you're going to the test center for IELTS test or PT test, I recommend that you listen to BBC World Service or watch documentaries on BBC about nature, and on different topics, because that prepares for you for the listening test and for speaking test. And the next thing is, remind yourself of what things you need to carry or take to the test center. For example, don't forget your passport if you're going to take an IELTS test. This happens because during the nervousness, students often forget what stationery items that they need to carry to the test center. So remind yourself of the things that you need to take with you to the test center. And as you get to the test center, don't get nervous. One surest way to build confidence is to constantly remind yourself that you've done a great deal of preparation and feel confident. Don't worry too much about the tests. Remind yourself that you know the test format. You are familiarized with the test format. You've done a great deal of practice. You know what each question type, each component of the question type test consists of. You know how to tackle each question type. So be assured that you've done a great deal of preparation. So don't worry about the test, because there won't be any question types that you haven't practiced, because you know the test format. And the last piece of advice I'd like to give you, and some of you may not like this idea, is drink coffee. Unless you're allergic to coffee, drink black coffee, because coffee contains some substance which triggers the brain activity. So it also helps you perform physically well during the test. So with these